When did you first learn that President Trump intends to increase tariffs if Canada retaliates, and how has that changed your strategy?
I think,
Yeah, he was caught napping. Huge relief. When we come back, we'll talk about the tariffs that still might happen, but I think won't now. We'll be right back with. We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like the station. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Resubscribe if you need to. Really appreciate it. Helps a small station like this, but wants to be a larger one. I don't know what to say except, wow, we can all exhale. Oh, relief. The tariffs didn't go through. They would have been catastrophic. I was looking yesterday at some of the food that was going to get double duty going back and forth. This would have made incredibly large grocery bills even larger. And this would have been absolutely devastating for people like you and I. You know, it's a hard economy right now. It would have made it even harder. I think it would have pushed us into a depression. You know, and as some people have pointed out, that combined with the carbon tax would have been a 50%, 45% tariff, essentially. So where are we? What happened yesterday? I don't know. It's hard to keep up. In fact, it's so hard to follow the news that I didn't even get a broadcast out yesterday. But here's what Justin Trudeau reported. I don't often go to Justin Trudeau as a source, but interestingly enough, no, sorry, this is Donald Trump responding. I love this comment by Stephen Chase, sending 10,000 Canadian soldiers to patrol the border, and he didn't say soldiers. Notice that he said frontline personnel. Can mean just about anything. Would be cheaper than massive bailout packages for workers and companies. And this is Donald Trump on True Social. I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation, wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border, separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for 1 month period, during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessert, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I look forward to participating in these negotiations and President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. Interesting, Trump did not go on True Social yesterday to talk about the deal he made with Justin Trudeau. Now, what does that tell you? Justin Trudeau took to X last night to announce, just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel, whatever that is, are and will be working on protecting the border. Now, comment. I can't believe Trudeau is still talking about his failed $1.3 billion border security fix because it's phony. I'll show it to you again. I've been the only journalist showing people the fine print of the fall economic update, the statement that came out in December, where the border security plan is located. It's called Safety, Security, and Fair Governance. Look at those numbers. That's $1.3 billion over count them, 6 years. Trudeau spending more on the gun grab in this fiscal year, than he's spending on border security. So how can Trudeau have the gall to suggest this plan with 10,000 troops has anything to do with his so-called border security plan, which did not contain any boots on the ground? There was no 10,000 frontline personnel. There was promises to do something 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. Now, you think Americans are that stupid? They don't know what a projected cost is? This money has not been spent. It hasn't even been delegated. Hasn't even been allocated. Donald Trump knows this. Unfortunately, most of the National Press Corps and most of the Conservative Party doesn't seem to realize this either. This border security project is failed. What Trudeau announced yesterday had nothing to do with this. I can't say enough about this phony border plan because it is ineffective and it's not doing anything to enhance border security right now. Trudeau made a huge concession to Donald Trump yesterday to put actual, I don't know what these frontline personnel they're going to be. We don't have 10,000 RCMP officers to put down there. We don't have 10,000 CBSA agents to put at the border. Do we have 10,000 people in uniform? Well, if we cleaned out NDHQ and put them all down there, maybe. But the total number in the armed forces is well below 60,000 again. Where are we going to find 10,000 bodies? But Trudeau will have to find 10,000 bodies, or we get whapped with this tariff, and it's going to be ugly. But read that. I encourage you to read that report. So here's the summary of what we got. This is not for Donald Trump, just for Donald Trump. This is for Canadians. This might be the only time Trudeau has ever done anything for Canada since he's been in office. And he had to be forced to do so at the point of a tariff, a 25% tariff. But this is interesting. Now, this is not the $1.3 billion border plan. This is an enhanced border plan that will include 30-day delay on U.S. tariffs, a fentanyl czar. God knows who could that be? I would suggest somebody like the standing of a Rick Hillier, a former chief of defense staff, who could be a combined fentanyl border czar. Rick Hillier is the man for that. 10,000 boots on the ground for Canada-U.S. border. Choppers and new technology. Canada will list the cartels as terrorists, agents. U.S.-Canada Joint Strike Force to fight organized crime. We are already joined at the hip to the U.S. military. Anybody who doesn't know this, in fact, a lot of Americans don't know how closely our two armed forces work together. They collaborate. And not just seconding officers to posts at U.S. bases, but we have a joint continental defense agreement with the U.S. Army and the Canadian Army. We have been a co-signer of NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, since 1957. 58, I think, was actually signed. And of course, we're a member of NATO. We're a founding member of NATO. And we have joint exercises constantly with the United States Army, Navy, and Air Force, and Marines. So we're already joined at the hip. So the idea of having a U.S.-Canada Joint Strike Force to fight organized crime blends very well into the current situation. Excellent idea. I guarantee you all of this came from Donald Trump's quarters. I don't think Justin Trudeau, for a minute, was thinking about doing any of this on Monday. But Tuesday, the world changed. Yes, the world did change overnight. Now, you noticed at the beginning of the broadcast, Trudeau was very surprised by the question about what are you going to do if Trump doubles the tariff to 50% as a result of your retaliatory tariffs. Trudeau didn't even know this, but here it is in red print. Should Canada retaliate against the United States in response to this action through import duties on the United States exports to Canada or similar measures, the President may increase or expand in scope the duties imposed under this order to ensure the efficacy of this action. So there it is in red print. Now, Pierre Poilievre was late in the game, very late. He should have been up on the weekend, calling for a border czar, calling for troops at the border, standing strong with Alberta Premier Daniel Smith. Instead, he kept talking about carbon tax Carney. Days on end. And it was a time to talk about tariffs and the border. But Poilievre did come out with, I think, some useful suggestions. He was just a little late. We must send Canadian Forces, troops, helicopters, and surveillance to the border now. Add at least 2,000 border agents and extend CBSA powers along the entire border, not just a crossing. Install high-powered scanners, border surveillance towers, and truck-mounted drone systems to spot border incursions. It's time to put Canada first. Yeah, we're back on message, Pierre. We're back on message. That's exactly what we need to do. For Canada first. You were talking 2,000. I guess Donald Trump came up with 10,000 because, believe me, that wasn't Justin Trudeau's idea. He would not have suggested. Trudeau would not have suggested 10,000. Poilievre was only going to go as high as 2,000. So where does that put us? Well, in a much better position than we were on Tuesday morning. And this is the breaking news. Some weird things were happening yesterday, though. And I'm going to start with this one because it doesn't get any more bizarre than this.
For our first of many steps, effective today, I have directed BC liquor sales to immediately stop buying American liquor from red states. Liquor store employees will be removing the most popular of these brands from government store shelves.
Okay, so he was beginning the process of stripping the shelves of Jack Daniels and Jim Beam, and that's largely, there's a lot of California wines as well, but what immediately comes to mind in terms of liquor store and American spirits is Jack Daniels and Jim Beam. So, but only from red states. The nerve of this David Eby, this is the Premier of British Columbia, putting his big foot in his big mouth, acting like an idiot, announcing he's going to be removing American liquor from the shelves before the tariff from the United States even came into effect. So a little presumptuous. What do you expect from a socialist? Why they reelected that moron, I have no idea, but he's back in office again in BC. That province has gone through carnage under the NDP. Half the province is stoned. It free government drugs everywhere. But BC has gone mad, and it's my place of origin. I was born on the West Coast. I don't recognize that province anymore. But anyway, Eby is crazy to say he's only red states. You're going to attack Republican states. How do you define red state? Is the governor, the 2 senators, representatives, all? What makes a red state? How would you define that, David Eby? Well, better cancel that plan. That's going in the waste paper basket. Now, what did Donald Trump have to say about all this? He's very fixated on the banks, you'll notice, but just listen to this.
I spoke with Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada, and we had a good talk in the morning, but I did ask him a couple of questions, like, banks aren't allowed to do business in Canada. Canada is very tough. Canada is very, we're not treated well by Canada, and we have to be treated well. Banks are not, as an example, allowed. Did you know that American banks are not allowed to do business in Canada? Can you believe that? And that's one of many things that we talked about, and I think we'll win most of the subjects. But for some reason, a lot of things have been very unfair with Canada. I noticed that in the first term. You deal with people, and after a while you begin to realize, like you learn that Larry Ellison's very tough to do business with, okay? He's a very tough guy. I mean, I'm sure you're shocked to hear that. But Canada is very tough. They're very, very tough to do business with. And we can't let them take advantage of the U.S. They don't take our agricultural product for the most part. They don't take our cars. They make cars, but they basically don't take our cars. And, you know, we don't need, and look, I think we're going to have another good conversation today.
Let's stop it there for a second, because what are you hearing here? Cars. He's mentioned cars on a number of occasions. This could be absolutely catastrophic for Ontario, because I don't think they're going to be buying any cars from Canada. We might not even be making cars anymore. Now, why did this happen? Because Trudeau and Ford, Doug Ford, your phony conservative premier, pushed electric vehicles on the car companies, said we were going to phase out the gasoline-operated motor, the combustible engine, going to phase it out by 2030, so what the heck? And they're all going to be electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are like the Edsels from the 1950s. Nobody wants them. They can't sell them. And Ontario is on a road to make cars that nobody wants to buy. And apparently we're going to lose the United States as a principal partner. And that, of course, goes back to the Auto Pact in 1965. So I don't know if he's simply going to scrap the Auto Pact, renegotiate, or just pretend it doesn't exist. But it's very, very, very bad news for the car industry. And I don't know why he's fixated with banks right now, but that's another one of his principal concerns. Let's listen to a little more.
We're actually speaking at 3 o'clock again, but we don't need them to make our cars. We don't need them to give us lumber. We don't need them for agricultural products because we have all the agriculture we need. They don't take our agricultural product for the most part, our milk and dairy, etc. A little bit they do, but not much. We take theirs. And as far as cars are concerned, they took in a big percentage, almost 19% of the market. And, you know, I wouldn't mind making our cars in the United States, so we have a problem there. I'd like to make our cars in the U.S. We don't need Canada to make our cars. With that being said, we're going to have another call at 3 o'clock. We had a call this morning. It was a pretty good call, I'd say.
So we had a pretty good call in the morning. Something happened in the afternoon. Something moved. Something shifted. A seismic shift in attitude. Here's what I'm theorizing happened. Justin Trudeau realized his back was against the wall, that this tariff was going to be catastrophic on everybody, and he decided to kneel. He apologized to Donald Trump for wishing Kamala Harris had have won the presidential election. He apologized to Donald Trump for referring to him as a dangerous populist. He apologized for his bad attitude. He begged for mercy. And he agreed to Trump's terms on border security. That's what happened in the afternoon call. Donald Trump was very pleased with himself, but he didn't, as usual, head to social media and talk about it. I don't know why. It's almost like the experience was enough for him of humbling, humiliating Justin Trudeau. And I think whatever happened during that phone call, Canada won. Canada won because it's finally getting some border security, and it's finally, fentanyl is suddenly an issue again. You remember when it was raised at the news conference with Trudeau, Melanie Joly, and Dominique LeBlanc standing behind, the two of them standing behind Trudeau. And one of the reporters asked a question about fentanyl. Melanie Joly's eyes rolled like, oh, why are we talking about this? Like, wow. Yeah, it's a serious problem in Canada. True, if there wasn't a market for the drug, it wouldn't be smuggled in. But reducing the supply is key to tackling this problem. And Melanie Joly doesn't think it's a problem, obviously. I don't know if Justin Trudeau thinks it's a problem either. He knows there's it's a precondition. Justin Trudeau knows it's an area that Donald Trump likes to concentrate on. But as of Tuesday, Justin Trudeau discovered border security, probably for the first time in his life, because he was forced to. You notice that Trump is not talking about oil anymore, by the way? Did you notice that? Every conversation, every interview he's done about the tariff has been about oil. He keeps saying, we don't need Canadian oil. We don't need your oil. We make more than we can use. Somebody got to Donald Trump, because I went over this yesterday. The refineries in the U.S. are geared for Venezuelan and Canadian crude, not the sweet crude that the U.S. produces. So believe me, somebody got to Trump, maybe it was his Commerce Secretary, and said, Donald, you can't do this to Canadian oil, or we're not going to have any oil to refine. We're going to have a gas shortage. We're going to have lineups at the gas stations that would make the 70s look like a cakewalk. We're going to have devastation at the pump if you do this. The price of gas is going to double overnight. So Trump backed away initially from 25 to 10. Now it's nothing. You watch, he will not be talking about oil, Canadian oil being the problem. He keeps talking about $200 billion subsidy. I mean, he's talking about a trade deficit that is way over what it actually is. It's $45 billion when you take oil and gas into consideration. When you eliminate oil and gas from the equation, the U.S. has a trade surplus with Canada. Donald Trump needs to know that. Stop repeating the $200 billion talking point that somebody in the Commerce Department gave him, or the Energy Department. I don't know where he got it, but it's false. And he needs to know that. But there's a change in the attitude here. Trump did not look very, very optimistic in that interview. Here he is a little later on the Andrews Air Force Base, just outside of Washington, on the tarmac.
Retreat the tariffs against Canada. Well, it could happen. If they do anything, we will. Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada. And something is going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. Mexico, we've had very good talks with them. And this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada, and we're not going to allow that.
So he's essentially saying here, he's still not happy. Something happened to change the focus entirely. Poilievre was a little slow on this file, but he needs to take the lead right now and to say that Trudeau has essentially implemented Conservative Party policy here. He needs to take the lead on this and own this story. It's extremely important that he do so. Why? Because he needs to be adaptable to the situation. And he hasn't exactly been that in the last couple of weeks. Now, why is Mark Carney on CNN? And I'm going to find this for you here. No, this is sorry. This is pure
$155 billion in counter-tariffs is enough, and what would you do differently to get the president to change course? And to clarify your last question, are you saying that you would step aside and not compete for the head of the country to allow us to get through this crisis, or I'm unclear about your answer to the last question?
Well, I find it a strange question. Your CBC is asking me to step aside in the next election. It's a very strange request. No, we're not going to suspend democracy. The Canadian people run this country, and they will choose the next Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
But I'm going to conclude. I really wanted to show you this one here because this is quite fascinating.
Keeps bringing up the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States. Listen to what Prime Minister Trudeau told me on this show last month about that.
Okay, question. What is Mark Carney doing on CNN speaking for the government of Canada? I thought he was an outsider. I thought he had nothing to do with this government. I was 9 years, he's been out of the country. Now he is doing interviews on behalf of the federal government. Mark Carney has been unelected, not elected to do anything.
Notion.
Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that's not actually an issue.
Kind of a curious answer. I don't define myself as not being Phil Mattingly. How do you define being Canadian, and what did you make of Trudeau's comment?
Well, I think there's many differences between our two great nations. One of them is that Canada's a mosaic. The U.S. is a melting pot. Canada puts greater weight on social services, on healthcare, protecting each other. Canada has different ties. We have deep, deep ties with the United Kingdom through the Commonwealth. We have deep ties through Europe. We have a different approach to international relations. We're not the superpower. We're looking to support it. So we are quite different. But look, we love America. We love Americans. This is, as I say, one of the greatest relationships in the world. We want it to continue, but if it's changing, we too will change. And I would say, if I can, Jake, I would say the mood of the country has moved from one of confusion to a sense of betrayal, and now very much to a sense of resolve. And the resolve from Canadians is if the U.S. has changed, if it's changed its priorities, how the U.S. is going to treat us, we'll move forward on our own.
Mark Carney been watching this show? He's talking about resolved. We have to resolve to resist Mark Carney. This guy is going to be a disaster. You notice how they say he's a candidate for Canadian Prime Minister, not for the Liberal Party of Canada, leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. He's a candidate for Canadian Prime Minister. He don't even have to be elected in this country to be Prime Minister. You just walk into the job of party leader. Carney doesn't make any sense. This is the same guy who said, I had to laugh. Well, who uses steel anymore? Where does this guy live? I mean, when's the last time he got on a bus? Does he drive a car? There's steel in hundreds, thousands of products. And no, we cannot survive with 25% tariff on steel. And Carney's no big deal. Is this guy, he's supposed to be an economist. He's supposed to be an economic whiz kid. He is a knucklehead. This guy doesn't understand basic fingers and toes arithmetic. Basic arithmetic. He doesn't understand it. He seems to think none of this, we can somehow, we're going to be lapsing back into the Stone Age, I guess, where before steel was a product in everyday use. That's all I can imagine he's really talking about here. He wants to back into the Stone Age, a new Stone Age created by eco freaks like him. Net zero people. Net zero means zero income. That's what it really means. It means we're all going to be poor. That's what net zero really means. And it is a completely arbitrary forecast created by the WEF and other globalists to strangle the life out of democratic countries like Canada. And that's all Carney seems to understand. So thank you again for your patience and sticking with me today. The internet just died and managed to get it back in 2 or 3 minutes, but Never had that happen on a live broadcast ever before. I guess that's one reason maybe it's safer to tape these things, but I like the energy level of a live broadcast. It's exciting to be reaching out to all of you at the same time. So where do we go from here? Like I said, Poilievre's got to place himself in the center of this. Justin Trudeau does not look like a savior. He looks like somebody who was forced into doing the right thing. He looks humiliated. He looks like a man who will lead, who will follow when there's a real leader in the room. That real leader was Donald Trump. And they weren't even in the same room. They were on the phone. And Justin Trudeau relinquished all of his ego, all of his arrogance, all of his spleen, just for a few minutes, and told Donald Trump he was sorry. I know that's what happened, because that's what Donald Trump was asking for all along. He wouldn't come out and say so in so many words, but he's just saying, just apologize for your rudeness, your evil wishes, and just be a man. And I think that might be the last thing Justin Trudeau ever does. We will have to recall Parliament, and Trudeau can't back away from that one. And I think we're going to be looking at spring election. We'll keep posted. By the way, taking your suggestions for the fentanyl czar, who do you think it should be? And we will leave the comment section open for a while so people can contribute. I think Rick Hillier would be. I think it should be a joint fentanyl border czar, and I think Rick Hillier. I'm nominating Rick Hillier if he wants the job, of course. I've reached out to Rick Hillier to have him on the show this week or next. Hasn't responded yet, but I'm optimistic we will get him. But my God, we don't. Yeah, somebody just is not a liberal. No, we don't need another Liberal Party hack or a Trudeau Foundation hack heading up the fentanyl czar position. We need somebody who's serious and is actually going to use the office for the national good, not the Liberal Party. Thank you for watching today, folks. Once again, we'll try not to have interruptions like that ever again, but I'm going to keep doing the show live. We'll be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know, and maybe some you don't. And let's continue to resist. Bye for now.